I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, American renewal. Reaction pours in following President Trump's address to a joint session of Congress. We're at the White House. Health update. The Vatican provides details on the Holy Father's condition as he battles double pneumonia in a Rome hospital. Plea to the Prime Minister. The son of pro-democracy advocate Jimmy Lai makes a direct request to a lawmaker in the UK. Plus, portrait of hope. An artist from Mexico brings a giant Get Well Soon card to the Holy Father's Hospital in Rome. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on Ash Wednesday and the start of Lent. Our top story tonight, President Donald Trump reveals new information about the war in Ukraine and the war on terror. He spoke about both during his joint address to Congress, a speech which often divided the House chamber along party lines. And we have comprehensive team coverage. Eric Rosales brings us reaction from Capitol Hill in a moment. But first, we begin with White House correspondent Owen Jensen, who also witnessed the speech firsthand. Owen.
That's right, Tracy. I was at that speech last night in standing room only. Now, one side of the chamber, I can tell you, a lot of cheering. The other side, pretty much just the opposite. Now, in the lengthy time he spoke, the president covered a lot of ground, including the war in Ukraine and that deadly Afghanistan withdrawal from a few years ago.
America is back.
And with those words, President Donald Trump kicked off his speech to Congress, covering an array of topics, including Ukraine, with Trump revealing,
Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, he said.
And as the war in Ukraine continues into its fourth year,
it's time to stop this madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end this senseless war. If you want to end wars, you have to talk to both sides.
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz telling reporters today he thinks there will be movement in very short order.
But I just got off the phone before I walked out here with my counterpart, the Ukrainian National Security Advisor. We are having good talks on a location for the next round of negotiations, on delegations, on substance.
Also in his remarks to lawmakers, President Trump recalled the horrific loss of 13 American troops and 170 Afghan civilians killed during the chaotic Afghanistan withdrawal. But now, 3.5 years later, after Abbey Gate, a suspected senior planner in the suicide bombing has been captured.
Tonight, I am pleased to announce that we have just apprehended the top terrorist responsible for that atrocity, and he is right now on his way here to face the swift sword of American justice.
And Waltz provided an update.
He landed overnight. The president was emotional, but he was thrilled to be able to call those families and say this monster is going to be brought to justice.
Separately, President Trump spoke with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today. Trump doesn't believe that Canada is doing enough to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Also tonight, President Trump is pausing tariffs for a month for U.S. automakers on imports from Mexico and Canada. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Our reaction from lawmakers on both sides was swift and hard-hitting. Republicans praised President Trump's first weeks in office. Democrats claim that most of what the president said last night was untrue. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales was in the House chamber for the speech. Eric, what can you tell us?
Well, good evening, Tracy. Yes, I was inside the chamber. I actually got a seat on the front row of the media gallery directly behind the president, and it was quite a scene. What struck me the most was the opposite reactions to the issues of President Trump. What he was talking about after the speech, I did speak to a number of lawmakers.
It was a lot. Look, I was heartsick at how divisive last night was, because I think our nation and the world needs to see the United States united, not divided.
Nothing in it for you. For all the promises that he would bring down the cost of living, he spent more time talking about Greenland and the Panama Canal and the stupid Gulf of America idea than he did talking about anything he's doing to bring down the cost.
But Republican Congressman Byron Donald says he was happy with the president's economic message.
The president announced last night that for every one new regulation, he's going to cut 10 regulations. So those same business owners who might be concerned about tariff policy are welcoming a reduction in the regulatory state.
Republicans say anything the president said would be met with disapproval by Democrats.
They wouldn't stand to applaud the military. They wouldn't stand to applaud law enforcement. They wouldn't stand to applaud DJ, this young man who's a brain cancer survivor. It was just remarkable that they had just determined, no matter what Trump says, I'm opposed to.
For the Democrats, I don't know what rock bottom is for them, but not standing up and cheering for DJ, who survived cancer, or Laken Riley's family, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with these people.
Just minutes into the president's speech, Democratic Congressman Al Green of Texas waved his cane, shouted at the president that he did not have an election mandate. Congressman Green refused to sit down after several warnings from the House Speaker, and the Sergeant-at-Arms ended up removing Green from the chamber. After exiting, Green told reporters he did not regret his protest.
I was making it clear to the president that he has no mandate to cut Medicaid. I have people who are very fearful. These are poor people, and they have only Medicaid in their lives when it comes to their health care.
And by the way, that matter isn't over. House Speaker Mike Johnson called Green's outburst shameful, and Republican Congressman Dan Newhouse has already filed a resolution censuring him. The Speaker says that he will absolutely bring it to the floor for consideration, and that vote could take place tomorrow. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Democrat mayors from 4 major cities appeared before lawmakers today answering questions over so-called sanctuary city policies. Republicans say the cities are shielding criminals who are in the country illegally and are not cooperating with federal officials.
Sanctuary cities make us all less safe and are a public safety nightmare. That is why I launched an investigation into sanctuary cities and why these mayors are here today. We cannot let pro-criminal, alien policies and obstructionist sanctuary cities continue to endanger American communities and the safety of federal immigration enforcement officers.
In turn, leaders of Boston, New York, Denver, and Chicago push back on any attempts for further legislation.
The false narrative is that immigrants in general are criminals, or immigrants in general cause all sorts of danger and harm. That is actually what is undermining safety in our communities. If you wanted to make us safe, pass gun reforms. Stop cutting Medicaid. Stop cutting cancer research. Stop cutting funds for veterans. That is what will make our city safe.
All right, now to the border town of Eagle Pass, Texas. That is where Vice President J.D. Vance, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard are highlighting the administration's efforts to stop illegal crossings and drug trafficking. Vance is set to tour the border, hold discussions with state and local authorities, as well as visit a detention center. And let's bring in Dylan Corbett now, founding executive director of the Hope Border Institute. Previously, Dylan has served as an official at the Vatican's dicastery for promoting integral human development and also coordinated the work of the Vatican's Migrants and Refugees section in Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. Dylan, welcome back. Good to see you. President Trump, as you know, made illegal immigration one of his top priorities. What have you seen there since January 20th?
You know, we've seen a continuing in the decline of people who are coming to the border. As we went into the election year last year, the Biden administration began to really lean into some restrictive policies, restricting asylum, the ability of other vulnerable migrants to claim protection at the border. And that's continued. Under the Trump administration, since they began in January, we've seen a continuing decline in the number of people who are arriving to the border. And we've also seen some more stepping up of policies which make it more difficult for asylum seekers to get protection. In fact, I'd say right now that effectively, as we've known it through the years, asylum is over right now. Now, it's in the courts, and that may change. But in terms of shutting down the border to asylum seekers, it's true. The Trump administration has really done more in the last several weeks than they were able to do in the first 4 years of the first term.
As mentioned, Vice President Vance, as we know, is a Catholic convert, and along with other members of the administration, are in Eagle Pass visiting the southern border. What do you think their visit says to you and the people that you help?
Yeah, the border is important to our country for a variety of reasons. Immigration, of course, but also trade, addressing things like the fentanyl crisis, addressing cartel violence, and addressing things like national security. So I think it's a good thing that the Vice President has visited the border. Engagement is important, understanding the realities as they play out here on the border. That's important. So if he can take some knowledge back, if he can meet with stakeholders in national security and the community, people who do the work every day in Border Patrol, that's a good thing. It's a good thing, and he can take those learnings back to Washington, D.C. Now, of course, there's been some highly publicized flashpoints. People understand that there's friction and tension between the Catholic Church and this administration on immigration, but we need to find ways to constructively engage as well.
Last week, as you know, the Vice President acknowledged the Holy Father's criticism of the Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigration, yet he didn't respond to any of the specifics of the criticism. Last month, he also suggested that the U.S. bishops' approach to immigration, they were really more concerned, he said, with their bottom line, adding that they had not been a good partner in common sense immigration enforcement. I know that you worked for the USCCB. What was your reaction to all that?
Yeah, I was saddened. You know, the bishops, they, more than really any group in the United States, have done a lot to pick up the broken pieces of our really broken immigration system at the border. They've done a lot to stand up and process refugees around the world, and they've done it in partnership with the U.S. government. A lot of this work takes place in partnership with the U.S. government and in partnership with the government at all levels, including border enforcement, immigration enforcement, organizations and agencies here at the border. Our immigration system is broken. We can all agree on that. We need to fix it. There are some sensible fixes that I think conservatives, liberals, people from both sides of the political divide can come together on and agree on. But I think that the attack on the Catholic Church, the words against our Holy Father, that's unproductive. We're all interested in solutions right now. We're all interested in helping people who are forcibly displaced around the world, including those who are coming to our border. Those are real issues that affect our country, that affect border communities, and that require real solutions. And so I think we need to move beyond the controversy, move beyond the politics, and get to the point where we can talk about real solutions. Hopefully, this trip to the border can be a first step towards achieving that. But we need real reform.
All right, we're going to leave right there, Dylan. Thank you for weighing in. We appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you.
Well, the nation's highest court has rejected a Trump administration effort to block foreign aid spending. In a 5-4 ruling, the Supreme Court said the administration must unfreeze around $2 billion to USAID groups that receive some of the funds. They say the lives of millions around the world are at stake. The ruling does not say when the funds must be released and is expected to play out in the lower courts. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has moved to dismiss an emergency abortion case in Idaho. The lawsuit, originally filed by the Biden administration, argued that emergency room doctors had to provide abortions if needed to save the life of the mother. Idaho has some of the most pro-life laws in the country. The governor of Wyoming has blocked a measure that would require women seeking a medical abortion to have an ultrasound. Republican Mark Gordon says that he is not sure the measure is reasonable or necessary. Lawmakers can override the veto with a 2/3 majority. All right, now to Rome, where the Vatican says doctors increased the Holy Father's therapy for his respiratory issues. Pope Francis also spent part of the day sitting up in an armchair as he continues to battle double pneumonia. The latest update also says the Holy Father suffered no respiratory crisis during the day while receiving oxygen from a nasal tube. He will resume the use of a non-invasive mechanical mask for the night and remains in stable condition. Additionally, Pope Francis marked the beginning of Lent by receiving ashes as well as Holy Communion. Later, he called the Holy Family Parish in Gaza, which he has done consistently since the Israel-Hamas war began. Now, coming up later in the newscast, we remember the Holy Father's historic trip to Iraq, which took place 4 years ago this week. A new report says that the son of a Catholic pro-democracy advocate in Hong Kong is making an urgent plea on behalf of his father. Sky News reports that Jimmy Lai's health is worsening. The 77-year-old remains in solitary confinement in a prison in Hong Kong amid charges that he broke Beijing-backed national security laws. Now, Sebastian Lai says the situation is urgent and is asking UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to intervene and secure the release of Jimmy Lai, who is a British citizen. And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including prayers for the Pope. The faithful in Nigeria kick off Lent by honoring the Holy Father. And we remember the Holy Father's historic visit to Iraq 4 years later. The faithful in Nigeria marked the beginning of Lent by praying for Pope Francis. The pastor of St. Francis Church in Lagos says the Holy Father's hospitalization shows human limitation and prayed that God, in his infinite mercy, would grant him healing. Today marks 4 years since Pope Francis made history, becoming the first Roman pontiff ever to visit the country of Iraq. The visit in 2021 was part of the Pope's effort to encourage the country's embattled Christian minority and foster interreligious fraternity. While there, the Holy Father traveled 900 miles across the country. He not only met with Christian leaders, but also with Muslim leaders. His message to all the faithful was one of encouragement and inspiration, saying Iraq without Christians would no longer be Iraq because they are so integral to the country's identity. And joining us now is EWTN's Rodi Sher, editor-in-chief of Catholic News Agency's partner Al-Simina in Iraq. Rodi, great to be with you today. As we mentioned, today marks 4 years since Pope Francis went to Iraq. Tell us, how are people reflecting on this day, that historic visit, and is it still being felt in the country?
Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for having me. Indeed, Pope Francis's visit to Iraq was a historic and deeply meaningful event for all Iraqis, and especially for Christians. And it was the first Pope in history had ever visited the country. And it brought a sense of recognition and hope to Iraqi Christians, and his presence sent a strong message of presence, unity, and also support for Iraqis, especially minorities who had suffered a lot. So the legacy of this visit is still here. Even today, we remember every single step of Pope in our country, Tracy.
And Rodi, personally, what did it mean to you?
It means a lot. When we first heard that Pope is visiting Iraq, I'm very honest with you, we couldn't believe this because it never happened before that a Pope to visit Iraq. On a personal level, it affected me, and it had a lot of meanings for me as a Christian in this country, as we always hope that a Pope will visit our country as a sign of support for the Christianity who suffered a lot, as you know. So I still remember this historic moment, this historic visit. I personally did the introduction of the Pope on Franco Hariri Studium in Erbil and his historic Mass in Erbil. I can never, and I will never forget these historic moments.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. Really, let me ask you this. Has anything changed for Christians since the Holy Father visited Iraq? As mentioned, we know that Christians have long had to deal with discrimination throughout the history there in Iraq. Has anything come together, maybe more cohesiveness between?
Mm-hmm. Well, indeed, we cannot deny that the visit had a powerful impact on the mentality of people. Well, first of all, Pope let the world know that there are Christians in this part of the world. And the second thing was the Pope told people that it's here where God started the message to Abraham, and Abraham started his journey with God. If we recall the Pope's visit to Iraq's motto or slogan was, "You are all brothers." This was such a strong message for Iraqi people to realize that despite their differences, despite their political affiliation, despite their differences, but they're all brothers and sisters.
Rodi, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Good to see you, and God bless you.
Bless you. Thank you so much.
And if you'd like to learn more, EWTN's Colin Flynn recently traveled to Iraq, where he spoke to church leaders and the faithful. The hour-long special is available on EWTN's YouTube channel, so make sure you check that out. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, to dust you shall return, how the faithful in Rome commemorate Ash Wednesday, plus a major draw outside of the Holy Father's hospital in Rome. Due to his hospitalization, Pope Francis was unable to preside over the traditional celebration of Ash Wednesday today, but through a homily prepared in advance and his Lenten message, the Pope was still able to encourage the faithful to journey together in hope. EWTN Vatican contributor Valentina Di Donato has more.
For more than 60 years, popes have celebrated Mass for Ash Wednesday in the ancient Basilica of Santa Sabina, the oldest existing basilica in Rome that has preserved its original architectural style, with the blessing and the imposition of ashes on the faithful. It's also customary for the Pope to lead a procession from the nearby Church of St. Anselm that inaugurates the church's solemn Lenten season leading up to Easter. Because of his health condition, this year's procession and Mass were celebrated by Cardinal Angelo De Donatis, the Vatican's major penitentiary and the Pope's delegate. This is the first time in 20 years that a pope has missed the Lenten liturgy due to hospitalization. The last time it happened was when Pope St. John Paul II suffered severely declining health in 2005. In the homily written by Pope Francis, he emphasized that the imposition of the holy ashes brings to mind not only the memory of what we are, but also the hope of what we will be.
Although we receive the ashes with our heads bowed in remembrance of who we are, the Lenten season does not end there. On the contrary, we are invited to lift our eyes to the one who rises from the depths of death and brings us from the ashes of sin and death to the glory of eternal life.
Alla gloria della vita eterna. Just last week, while the Pope was still in the hospital, the Vatican published the Holy Father's Lenten letter. And in it, the Pope urged the faithful to embrace this season as a time of personal and communal conversion. The Pope also went on to write that it would be a good Lenten exercise for us to compare our daily life with that of a migrant or foreigner, to learn how to sympathize with their experiences, in this way discover what God is asking of us. Maria José Méndez Evoria migrated nearly 40 years ago when she fled her home country of Cape Verde to Italy. In an interview with EWTN, she expressed the importance of empathy for the plight of the migrant.
Maybe the Pope, like me, an immigrant, understands that there is a frequent tendency that goes against the real significance of what migration is. So now the Pope reminds people to place the person at the center of our reflections. We must see the migrant as a person.
The Pope reminded the faithful in his letter that our lives, too, are a journey, one that should be directed toward God with the help of God.
As a Catholic, I was helped so much by my faith. In my journey, there were so many moments of sadness, of pain. I fell, but I was able to get back up. And I don't believe I would have been able to do this alone. I had support from the Eternal Father. In my case, I call him the Eternal Father.
It's that kind of support from our Eternal Father that the Pope exhorted all the faithful to seek in our own lives.
Let us persevere in the certainty that ever since the Lord took upon himself the ashes of humanity, the history of earth is the history of heaven. God and man are bound together in a single destiny.
In Rome, Valentina Di Donato, EWTN News.
Finally tonight, faithful around the world continue to pray for the health of the Holy Father, and outside his hospital in Rome, one man decided to take matters into his own hands.
Mucha gente lo quiere y nosotros somos la excepción.
This beautiful portrait is displayed right under the windows of the papal suite at the Gemelli Hospital. It was made by an artist from Mexico. He says he wants to show the love that Hispanics have for Pope Francis. He adds the painting symbolizes the Pope's love and care for the Catholic Church, and it is beautiful. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night, and God bless.